Welcome to the Cory Lee Show, where our focus is on building leaders and transforming culture. My name is Cory Lee, and in each episode, I aspire to ignite something on the inside of you that encourages you to grow yourself and to make an impact on the world around you. Welcome to the Cory Lee Show. Welcome back to the Cory Lee Show, guys. Man, this is going to be part 2 of an amazing conversation that we had with my new friend, Yvonne. He was telling an amazing story about his journey from, he was leading a small congregation as a pastor, but just the injustices that were stirring up around him, the boldness that he had to take courage to stand up to those injustices, kind of had a price attached to it. He had to pay the price with putting his life in danger and his family in danger. And in part 1, if you have not listened to that, you're going to want to go back and listen to it, because he shares his journey. And where we left off at in part 1, he had fled to another country for safety. His family finally gets to him, and everything is good. They're there together as a family. But then he feels the Lord saying, "Hey, Yvonne, it's time for you to go back to Zimbabwe." And so that was the end of part 1. This is part 2. And so, Yvonne, welcome back to the Cory Lee Show. And I want to ask you a question, Yvonne. I would love to go into that moment where you're feeling the Lord saying, "Hey, it's time to go back." Can you process that with us a little bit? What do you mean when you said you heard the Lord say it's time to go back? I feel like that's one of the most important things we can do, is recognize the voice of the Lord for ourselves. And so I would just love for you to share your process with that.
Cory, first of all, thank you again for having me back to continue the story that we started. And I felt such a great connection when we spoke on the first part of the story. That there is a purposefulness to our conversation, which goes beyond us. And so I want to be cognizant of that, and to be appreciative of that sense of a purpose that's just bigger than us getting on a podcast. That this is about somebody else listening to this story and finding hope and finding courage and finding strength and finding answers in their own situation. So, first of all, it was hard to have gotten to a place of safety with my family, right? A 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and my wife is pregnant with our third one. And you kind of breathe a sigh of relief, because the logistics of getting everyone out of the country were not straightforward. If you remember, I left first, escaped the country, then had to try and get my family out, because they couldn't come through the route that I had taken, because that was a very harsh kind of a route. It was middle of the night. It was in the middle of the forest, trying to cross a border. And to do that with the 5-year-old and the 3-year-old and the pregnant woman is just, besides not being easy, if you tried it, is just wrong, right? Yeah. So it had already been hard. But, what was harder was that my wife had given birth whilst we were now in exile. Wow. To our third born. So my daughter was born, and 3 months after holding her, that's when that sense that it's time to go back, or I must go back, the job is not done yet, came. The sense that God was saying to me, what I began with you is not over. And to your question, how did I sense that? For me, it has always come through, number one, my personal time that I spend in prayer, just talking to God. Mm-hmm. My conversations with God have been some of the most valuable things that I have had on this entire journey. The fact that I can just start talking to him no matter where I am, whether I am in hiding, or if I am in prison, or if I am on the run in the middle of the night trying to cross the border, or I'm in a safe country holding my 3-month-old baby and I'm trying to figure out what to do next. It's prayer. It's just turning to God and opening my heart to him. And so I it started off as just a sense of being a little uncomfortable with where I was, right? And I remember asking, I said, God, I don't know what it is, but I don't feel at peace. Like, we escaped, we're in a safe country, but I'm not at peace. What's happening? And that's when I had that sense that the reason I'm not at peace is that this is not the finality of what God called me to do, or of this journey.
Wow.
And I'll tell you of an interesting moment where I felt more peace inside the prison than I did when I was outside.
Wow.
It was the weirdest sense, right? Where I remember thinking to myself, I feel so relaxed and so calm right now, even though I'm in the middle of an incarceration. And yet when I was outside and I was free and I was safe, there was a sense of panic, or there was a sense of this kind of sense in my heart that there's still something else to be done.
Yeah.
So that's the sense that I had, was that there was this niggling feeling in me that there was still something else to be done. And so when I took that sense of being uncomfortable, or that sense of not being at rest to God in conversation, that's when I felt him say, that's because the mission is not done. It's not finished yet. There's still another level that I want to walk with you. And I think that particular moment of then realizing, oh, he wants me to go back. Right?
Yeah.
First of all, initially, there's the shock that comes with it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're thinking, this doesn't make any sense. Like, whoa, wait a minute. We just got out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But then there's the realization that we got out. He brought us out. He brought me through this. So going back is not it's not illogical. It is in fact logical. If he's the one that is sending me on the journey, then going back is the most logical thing to do. So at that time, that's how I sort of kind of walked through that. It took now, I say this in a couple of minutes, but it took a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
To deal with this, because then there was the conversation with my wife, and then there was the determination this time to speak to my kids about it, because the first time, when I escaped the country, I didn't tell them what was happening, why we were leaving and so forth. But this time I was determined to have a conversation with them. So this took a couple of weeks. So that was, first of all, me coming to terms with, this is what God wants me to do, and dealing with that. And then bringing my wife into the conversation, and allowing that to settle within her, allowing her to have her own almost tug back and forth with me, with God, right? And then once that was settled, then there was bringing our kids into it, and then there was now the preparation to actually walk it out.
I love that. And that there is so much value in what you just said right there. You feel this stirring, and I love how you feel the feeling, this something on the inside, and you did exactly what the Lord wants us to do. You brought it to him in conversation and allowed him to give you language around it. Man, that's that.
Oh yeah. And it never gets easy, but you also can never beat the peace that comes with it when you come to the end of it.
Yeah.
Right? Struggling with a hard decision when the Lord has put something on your heart that you feel inadequate for, that you feel scared of, that you feel like it's just a mistake to do. It's hard to do that, right? But eventually, and I was teaching a couple of pastors some weeks ago, and I said to them, one of the things, I do a little course that's entitled Missions of Courage, how to say yes to missions that are bigger than us when God says, this is what you've got to do. How do you do that? And one of the things I said to these pastors was, one of the features you're going to have in your life is your own Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? This is a regular place where you go to pour your heart out in grief to God the Father, to try and gain understanding for the mission he has called you to do. Because that's what Jesus did. If you remember that story, he's in that garden and he weeps and says, Lord, if it were possible, my Father, let this cup pass from me. Right? But then he gets to a place at the end of that where he then says, nevertheless, your will be done. Not my will, but your will be done. And I say to pastors that your Garden of Gethsemane, when you are on missions of courage, when you are on an outsized mission, when you are having to punch above your weight, when you are having to move mountains that are so much bigger than you are, your Garden of Gethsemane is your process of going from I am scared and I don't want to do this to I'm at peace and let your will be done.
Yeah. Wow.
That's what your Garden of Gethsemane is, and it's a regular place. It's a place that you're gonna be in regularly, but it's an amazing place because it's a place of strength. You get there with your weakness and your concerns and your fear, and you always leave with a sense of victory and a sense of empowerment and sense of confidence and a sense of faith. That's what your Garden of Gethsemane is. And if you're on a mission that requires courage, if you're on an outsized mission, on a mission where you have to punch above your weight, that is one of the keys and the regular things that will get you through it.
Yeah. Well, I want to encourage all of us to go for that. You know, I love that, a outsized mission. And man, we've been in situations like that. And if you tap into reasoning, if you tap into the intellect, you will reason yourself out of it. But I love what the language you use, that it's the most logical thing. When you have a word from the Lord, that is the most logical thing, right? And so,
yeah.
So I would love to go back into your story some more as well. So you have your Garden of Gethsemane moment, and it's time to go back. The mission's
and it's
not
time
complete.
to go back. It's
So
time
take
to
us
go
on that
back.
journey.
So the day comes and I start to make the journey back. The goodbyes are as hard as you can imagine. By the way, it doesn't make it any easier. Yes, you have the peace and you have the confidence, but you still deal with emotions, around this. And so it was tough. I remember when I flew out of the US heading back home, I flew through Heathrow. I cried all the way, Cory. I just had tears. And eventually we began, I traveled to Heathrow, then to South Africa, Johannesburg, and then I took my final connecting flight.
Can I ask you something real quick? At this moment in the story, do you know what you're going back to do?
At this moment, Cory, I don't have the full picture.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
I don't, and I suspect you asked the question because you kind of knew the answer.
Yeah,
right.
I love that.
Without knowing it, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, I don't have the full picture. The only thing I have is that he said to do it, and this is one of the keys to all of these missions God sends us on, is that we don't always have the full picture, but we have his full instructions.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the trick is, if I can follow his instructions, I'll see the fullness of the picture. It'll work out. It'll work out as he said. And that's usually where our challenge is in the obedience and accepting the instructions, because as human beings, and it's natural to all of us, what you want is the assurance. What you want is the full picture, right? Give me the full picture so that I know what to expect and I can know how to prepare myself. It doesn't always work like that. So I don't even know how I'm going to start. What am I going back to? What's going to be the mission? And yet, as the plane begins to go down to land into Harare International Airport, I'm vacillating between these waves of excitement and these kind of dark, almost, these dark caves of fear that I'm finding myself in every now and again. And I'm thinking, will I be arrested? Will I be not? It's been 6 months. I've been away for 6 months, and I'm hoping things have quietened down. And finally, I touched down, and I remember praying as I'm sitting in the seat. I was sitting in a 3-seater. I was the only person sitting in this 3-seater at the window, and I'm sitting there praying, and I'm thinking, Lord, if there's a way that you could physically come down the aisle and hold my hand as I'm walking out, this would be a great time to do it. This would be a great moment to do it. And so I'm almost the last person to get. You know how people, when that seatbelt sign goes off and everybody gets up immediately and everyone is in the aisles, I am like taking my time. I'm like, you got everybody, you go for it. I am good. I'm not trying to rush out. And this one guy who was sitting, I think he was sitting in front of me, reaches back after taking his bag from the top, and he looks at me and he says, "Hey, Pastor, I just want you to know that we are so proud of you." Wow. And it was such a powerful moment because, it kind of gave me the assurance that God was watching. He was with me. Wow. And so I get off the plane, and immediately as I get off the plane, it didn't even take 5 minutes, surrounded by security agents. They took my passport and my bags, and once they verified it was me, they told me immediately that I was being detained. I was taken to a holding room where I was stripped completely naked, and I was strip searched in that room, and they went through my entire bag. I went through an interrogation, and then eventually, after a long time and many other things that happened there, the actual police were called. They then came in. They had a warrant for my arrest, and immediately I was arrested. I was put in handcuffs, and I was thrown in the back of a pickup truck, and they drove me off back to the cells that I had been in 6 months earlier. And it was a difficult moment because I think I was coming face to face with the reality of saying, yes, I'll go back. Like, this is what it looks like. But that wasn't even the worst of it. The worst of it was up ahead. But I say the worst of it, but the worst of it also contained in it the best of it.
Wow.
So I say the worst of it because they took me to court for my bail hearing. This time it happened very quickly. If you remember the last time, thousands of people had gathered at the courts. This time they did not want that to happen. So they moved me very quickly, processed me very quickly, and then I was sent off to a holding prison. And so my bail was denied, and I was to be held in detention whilst I was awaiting trial.
Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying this episode of the Cory Lee Show. Y'all, I am on a mission to build leaders and to transform culture. So if you're looking for a speaker who speaks directly to the heart, a mentor to come alongside you and your team, or if you're in a position where you're looking for a personal coach who embraces where you are and also believes in who you could become, then I would be honored to walk this path with you. Simply reach out to me on my email at Cory@CoryLeeLeadership.com. Look, let's make your vision a reality. Contact me, and together we'll navigate the path from aspiration to achievement. Your transformation, it starts now.
On the way to this holding cell, the prison guards who were with me when we got to the holding cell, there were other prisoners, by the way, with me, and then they were offloaded. And then they kind of said, "You're not for here. You're going to another prison," which was surprising because I thought, wait a second, this is where I'm, my lawyer and my friends and my family, they know I've been brought to this one. And they're like, nope, the instructions are you're being taken to another prison. Yeah. And so I asked, which prison is that? And they say, you're being taken to Chikurubi Maximum Security Prison. And Cory, that was one of the scariest things I could have heard in that moment, because Chikurubi Maximum Security Prison is notorious for holding the worst criminals of our country.
Wow.
It's not a maximum security prison for nothing. It's where everyone who is charged with murder, violent murders, violent robberies, drug trafficking, serious offenses, armed robbery. This is where, people who are in prison for rape and things like this is where they're held. And this is where I was being taken. And it was a weird sense, because I'm being taken to this prison for the worst convicted offenders, but I haven't gone to trial yet. I haven't been convicted yet. But it was a sign to me that they were not taking this lightly, and their idea was to make sure that they would mete out the deepest punishment possible. And as we get to this cell, Cory, my mind has played back every worst possible scenario, which is kind of the horrible thing about fear. You know what I mean? Fear causes you to play out everything to its worst end.
Wow.
Whereas faith, on the other hand, gives you the opportunity to play out everything to its best possible end.
Ooh.
And so I'm there, and we're driving to this prison, and I've played out every worst scenario that could happen. I've played out being attacked. I've played out being raped. I've played out being robbed, being mistreated, and I am in a state. I'm shaking. I can't even hold still. I had leg irons and handcuffs. And apart from the bumpy ride of the truck, those leg irons and handcuffs are jingling because I'm shaking. I'm literally shivering. And I have a moment in that prison truck that stands out as one of the moments that I always try and ask God to take me back to, because it was an amazing moment. I close my eyes and imagine that this is the end, that I'm going to die, and they're taking me to my death. And I had asked the guard who was with me, and I said to him, "Man, tell me what's going to happen. Like, am I being taken to a torture house? What's happening?" And part of what the guy says to me, he says, "No, you're definitely going to the prison, the maximum security prison." And I wasn't convinced of that. So I close my eyes and I start off crying. I start off crying to God, saying, "Lord, I don't understand why this would be happening to me. Like, please help me. Please save me. Please, please, please." And I'm just pleading and crying. I'm just really powerless. And then this hymn comes back to me, and I write about this in the book. This hymn comes back to me that I had heard when I was 15 years old. When I was 15 years old, in the boarding school that I used to be, we used to go to chapel every Sunday, and we used to sing a hymn there, which is entitled "Abide with Me." It was written by a guy called, I think it's Francis Henry Light, years ago. "Abide with me, fast falls the eventide, the darkness deepens, Lord, with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, Lord, abide with me." Oh, man. I remember just as I came to the end of that song, and I sang the whole song, the whole way. And as I came to the end of every one of those verses, and finally to the end of the song, my spirits were lifted up. And I remember praying in that truck and saying, Lord, thank you. If this is the end, I want to go out with a thanksgiving song. I want to go out with saying, thank you for allowing me to live an amazing life. Thank you for allowing me to see my children. Thank you that they're going to be amazing girls. Thank you for the things you've allowed me to do. And I use that as a thanksgiving session rather than one of crying out of fear. It was wildly weird and yet fabulously amazing. It was such a moment. Like, I remember thinking right at the end of it, as I'm singing it, when the truck is arriving, I was like, if it's time to die, I have never been more ready than I am right now.
Wow.
Like, I'm ready. Like, they're not going to take my life. I'm giving it up.
Wow.
They're not taking it. I'm not looking at it as them snatching it away from me. No, I'm looking at it as, hey, I've given it up. The God has given. So it was such a moment for me, And I think when I look back, I think back on Christ, the fact that they didn't kill Jesus. He gave up his life.
Mm-hmm.
He gave up his life as a ransom for you and me, right? And so I entered this prison, and we arrived at the prison, and I remember thinking, okay, so it is a prison. We are here. Let's see what happens next. And as they take me inside, they finally bring me to the cells where I was going to be. It's a communal cell with about 43 other men in it. The unit itself had about 400 men in it. The entire prison has about 3,000 prisoners. So my cell, I would be with 43 men in one cell.
Wow.
And as they brought me to this cell and they left me there, they took the handcuffs off, left me there. I'm now waiting, and I'm like, okay, so if they haven't killed me, someone here is going to abuse me. And then this is where, remember earlier on I said the worst of it was to come, but the best of it was to come. This is where the best of it comes. These 4 guys approach me, Cory. And these 4 guys, as they come, the one guy leading them was a pretty tall guy. He stretches his hand out and he says, "Welcome, Pastor. We've been expecting you."
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, that could mean a bunch of things. Right? And then he says to me, "My friends and I have been following your story, the little bits and pieces we get here in prison. But last year, when thousands of people gathered for you, we heard about it here in prison because some of our inmates were at the courts waiting for their cases to be heard. So they saw the people who gathered for you. And when they came back, they told us the story. And then we heard that you had come back. And so my friends and I here were praying that you will be brought to this very cell."
Wow.
Cory, I remember thinking to myself, what is happening here? Because I'm standing there holding my few belongings, and externally I've prepared for a fight. But this is not what's happening. And then he says this to me. He says, and I said to him, "I don't understand why you would be praying for me and why you would be praying for me to be brought here." And they said, we knew that if they brought you into prison, that they wouldn't let you go, they wouldn't let you have it easy. And we don't know how things are going to be for you here. But my friends and I, we are believers. We are Christians, and we have made a decision that our job, for as long as you are in this prison, is to look after you.
Wow.
Because you have been fighting for our families. When we have been locked up in here and unable to fight for our families, that's what you were doing for them. And
Wow.
so as a way to pay you back, as a way to say thank you, we're going to make sure that we look after you as best we can. We can't protect you from everything, but we will be able to look after you.
Wow.
And his words were, "We want to make sure that you are stronger when you leave than when you came in."
Wow.
Cory, I have never been more humbled in my life than I was at that point.
Wow.
That those men would do that for me when they themselves are incarcerated. These guys were serving life sentences, 18 years. Another one was serving, 20 years for armed robbery, for murder. These are the people who've done some really horrible things. And yet here they are telling me, man, we're here to serve you. We found Christ and we're here to serve you.
Wow.
These guys, Cory, looked after me in ways I cannot describe. Every time I came back from solitary confinement or the torture that I experienced in the maximum security prison, these four men bandaged my wounds. They looked after me. These four men ministered to me. These four men stood me up in front of 400 men and they said, Pastor, preach. Preach. You've got a mission here. You've got a job here. So don't spend your time being depressed. Don't spend your time feeling sorry for yourself. God has brought you into this prison for a reason. And we are going to play our part to make sure that that reason is fulfilled.
Wow.
And for the 3 months I was held in that prison before I was then put under house arrest, those men showed me what it feels like, or what it means to be free, even though you are in incarceration. And I say this to a lot of people, that to prove that their mission was accomplished, that I was stronger when I left than when I came in. I was arrested another 6 times after that.
Golly.
I continued to do the work because I knew the formula. I knew these guys, God had shown, Cory, I without being preachy or anything, God had prepared for me before I got to that prison. He was there.
Wow.
He was there. He was there. And so this is why whenever people say to me, why didn't you stop? And I often say to people, if you had seen the things that I saw, I suspect that you too would have made the decision not to stop.
Wow. Wow.
And I know, I'd say to you, my time was, let me just, don't worry about that for a second. Let me, there's something about your show, Cory, that's quite special. But it didn't stop there.
Wow.
When I would come back to prison, it was coming back to my brothers. It was like coming back with a report back. It was like coming back for another shot of strength. It was like coming back for another level of the mission where God would speak to me again, where God would minister to me again whilst I was there through the pain. I'm not here to say to you it wasn't painful or that it was easy. No, it was painful. I had to endure it. I had to endure the pain. But it was in the middle of all of that, and at the end of all of that, the sum total of all of it was that God was in control, was that God spoke to me still, was that God ministered to some men in that prison, that was that God showed me that when he says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, it's not just a Bible verse. It's not just a concept, it's a reality.
Wow.
But I'll share this one last thing with you that then blew me away completely. Because for the next 1 year after I was under house arrest, we continued to organize. And thankfully, at the end of that year, we saw that dictator who had imprisoned me end up having to resign because there was an internal strife within his own party. But we were part of organizing people to go to the street finally to protest and to demand that he steps down. And it was amazing to see that happen. I would still be, I would go on to eventually be arrested again by the new dictator who took power. But it was at the end of that particular arrest that I saw unequivocally how God sews our life events together in ways that we sometimes can only ever understand when we say, yes, Lord, walk with me. Or say, yes, Lord, I'll walk with you. There are things about our lives and how God plans our lives we will never know until we say, yes, Lord, walk with me. Yes, Lord, I'll walk with you. Only at that point does he pull back the curtain and he says, look, look, this is what I'm. It's like your child, right? Your son. There are certain things that later on you show him, and you're like, hey, this is how this whole thing. And your son's like, wait, the whole time? Like the whole time it was you who was making sure I was fed, I was in school, you were back channeling things I didn't know. And here's where that moment happens for me. I leave prison on the 27th of November 2019, and I'd been stuck in and out of prison for a whole year in addition to the other year and a half. And I've been away from my family now for a while, right? And I'm just about to take off, and I find a friend of mine who says to me, "Hey, the there's an old lady who's asking whether you met some people in prison." I said, I don't know which old lady is this. And then they explained to me, and they're like, no, this old lady, she used to come to the youth group that I used to pastor, right? And what happened with this old lady, she was in her mid 70s, is that back in the 60s and 70s in Zimbabwe during the war, she had had her leg and her arm blown off by a landmine.
Wow.
Because they were using her as a human landmine detector.
Wow.
But she was a believer, her and her husband, and many years later in her 70s, she was serving the Lord. And the way she would serve the Lord was in a very obscure way, that she would look for old used Bibles. So she used to come to the youth group that I used to pastor, and she used to find old used Bibles. And she would ask me to collect old Bibles and other people as well to collect, old used Bibles for her. Guess what? For her prison ministry. For her prison ministry. So when the message came to me that there's an old lady who's asking whether I had met her friends or her disciples, it was that same old lady. 10 years, Cory, 10 years before I had been arrested and went into Chikurubi maximum security prison. This old lady used to come, get Bibles, go and disciple prisoners who in 10 years time would be the people that would look after me when I was at my weakest, when I was most lost, when I felt most abandoned, when I felt like there was no way out. God had prepared for me the whole time.
Wow.
The whole time. Even before I ever knew I would start this movement, before I ever knew I would walk this journey, he'd already put in place things to make sure that by the time I got there, I don't even know how else to explain it.
That's just.
I mean, dude, it's more. And that's why I say there are some things we will never know about our lives until we say yes to God, until we say, yes, Lord, I'll follow you there. Say,
Wow.
yes, Lord, come into my life and walk with me through this challenge that I'm facing. Only then do you begin to see that, wait, there wasn't a tooth fairy the whole time. It was my dad.
Yeah.
Like the whole time. It was you. Wow.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Yvonne, wow, I got so many other things I want to talk to you about. That is so amazing. It's so good.
Go
And
for it.
I know our time is limited. And so what I really want to encourage everyone who is listening, go out and get the book, find out more. I'm sure you go do speaking engagements, reach out to him, come and allow him to come and encourage your businesses, your organizations, your churches. We'll have the links in the show notes below with,
Yep.
support him through prayers. Yes. Financially, opportunities, man, just such an awesome story that I think, man, I hear just faith arises and encourages. And so the way I would love to end this, Vaughn, if you don't mind, man, I'd love for you to pray for us. I'd love for you
Oh,
to
wow.
pray for
That
faith,
would be awesome.
courage, and just whatever you feel led to pray for. But I would love to just end it on a prayer from you.
It would be my honor. It would be my honor. Father, my God, I thank you for this moment and this opportunity that Cory and I and his listeners are having right now. A moment of faith, of increasing our faith in you. My God, we we are limited in our thinking and in our logical understanding as humans, and leaning on you is the best thing we could ever do. And so today, Lord, as we close out this conversation, I ask that you would draw more and more of us to lean more and more on you. With everything that we're going through, there are people listening right now who are going through all sorts of challenges, or who are trying to make decisions about whether or not to do something that they really sense is part of their life calling. And today I pray that you would give them the confirmation by bringing them peace. It is your peace that gives us the confirmation, a peace that surpasses all understanding. And so today, my God, we declare our faith and our trust in you. For every task we have before us, for every journey we have before us, we have faith in you, the expectation that God is able to do what he said he would do. And now, Jesus, we thank you. Thank you for your love and for your grace. And that even as we are on this mission, we continue to lift high your name and to testify of the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And everybody said amen and amen.
Amen. Wow, what an amazing, love that. Love that. Well, Yvonne, truly appreciate you. You have added a ton of value to me. I know you have to our listeners. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, my brother. God bless you and all the best.
Amen. Well, thank you guys for taking a listen. Hope today has added value to you. Make sure you like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with any of the latest episodes of The Cory Lee Show. Hope you guys have a great day, and God bless.
3, 2, 1.
Okay. Thanks for joining me today. I hope I have added value to you. And if you have found value in this episode, let me know. Drop a comment and make sure you share with a friend or family member. See you next episode.